Alright guys, Captain Alex Mason here, and we're going to be doing our next episode. This will be episode 8 for today on Halloween H20, 20 years later. So, the year is now 1998, but in the pre-credits, we basically hear in the beginning the song Mr. Sandman, and our first scene occurs in Langdon, Illinois on October 29th. Marion Whittington, the nurse of Dr. Sam Lewis, who died in '95, drove up to her home, where she was shocked to see that it had been burglarized. Next door, the alerted neighboring teenage boy, some neighboring teenage boys, after one of them, ice hockey-attired Jimmy Howell, called the police. He went back to her house alone to check it for intruders with his hockey stick for protection. When he found nothing other than a ransacked home office and bottles of beer to steal, by the way, from the fridge, Miss Whittington was given an all-clear signal to return. Now dark outside, she discovered that the power was out, but searched with a flashlight in her office, where there was an empty folder labeled Laurie Strode. And guess what? This though was confusing. How in the world? Well, actually, it kind of makes sense. I know in the movie, it's a shock, it's a spoiler actually. Laurie Strode actually did survive. She never died, she just lived somewhere else. And this is what's awesome about the movie. She's still played by Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, she played through, like, the original timeline. I'm not talking Rob Zombie stuff. She, like, played in almost every Halloween, basically, where Laurie Strode was in it. So, anyway, Michael Myers was in the house behind her, sensing trouble and a presence. She raced back next door into the living room with a TV airing Ed Wood's Plan 9 from Outer Space. She found Jimmy murdered in an easy chair. His face was diagonally stabbed from a forehead, with his chin of an ice skate stuck into his face. The second teenage boy, Tony Algor, was discovered dead, standing up at the side door with a knife in his back, and he fell atop her. Myers stalked after her, and she valiantly fought him off with a fireplace iron poker. She broke a window poker and screamed at the police who had just arrived, "In here, goddammit!" but went unheard, which is kind of weird because you'd expect the damn cops to actually hear something, like when you're screaming at the top of your lungs, or better yet, when you're shooting a shotgun, you'd be like this, and they'll be like, "Do you hear that?" "What?" "It sounded like a shotgun noise." He's like, "No." You're probably hearing stuff. He's like, "Yeah. You want to go get a burger?" "Yeah, let's go do that." But yeah. She was later murdered after her throat being slit with a butcher knife. Police entered her home as she was being murdered. Only a few feet away, Myers drove off with a neighbor's car. As two officers noticed the broken neighbor's window, jokingly calling the dual VE, the daily double, breaking and entering, basically. Next day, it's October 30th, which is Halloween Eve. Detective Fitzsimmons and Detective Matt Sampson investigated the three gruesome killings, finding evidence that Loomis, who had spent his life tracking down that Halloween guy who butchered all those kids up in Anfield, they never found his body. That was like 20 years ago. Was obsessed with Michael Myers, newspaper clippings and shit. Basically like the conspiracy board, I like to call it, because then you put like newspapers and stuff and you'd be like putting like red lines and stuff. It's like, it's all connected. And stuff all labeled with "children found brutally murdered on Halloween," as well as other sketches, pictures of murder victims, and articles. They said, "Hey, Haddonfield, you might have a possible threat." The camera panned over to the bulletin board. Contents of the credits were played. Other headlines Filling in the back history of Myers read, local boy, age 6, kills sister with knife. Child murderer sent to state hospital. Dr. Sam Lewis. Past obsession? Laurie Strode, sole survivor of October mass murders. Babysitter killer on the loose. Headstone stolen from area cemetery. Child murderer escapes mental hospital. Is Michael Myers still alive? Survivor of Halloween murders killed in an auto accident. In voiceover, Loomis, who is now voiced by, get this, Tom Kane. Now, you guys may not know who Tom Kane is, but if you do know, you'll be like, wow, this really is another, like, somewhat Call of Duty thing, because Tom Kane voiced Captain Takeo Masaki, the Japanese guy from the Zombies mode, which is awesome. And basically, I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left, no reason, no conscience, no understanding, even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with his blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that that was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil. We're now introduced, like, tracking through school corridors in this classroom, which is now in California. We're now in California. California, yay! Glen, California. Summer Glen, California, basically. Highway 139, Northern Carolina. Actually, those 2 locations on October 31st. I'm sorry. But basically, at 12 at midnight, on the Laurie Strode, now assuming the name Carrie Tate, that's her alias, was still haunted by her teenage years, and she struggled to recover and overcome her life experience after Myers' attempt to kill her 20 years ago. She had been identified as the killer's sister. She woke up screaming, bringing her 17-year-old son, John Tate, to her bedside. She was attempting to live a normal life, but under the pretense of an assumed false identity to escape her past. While she was heavily medicated and experiencing frightening nightmares of paranoid visions of Michael appearing everywhere. She saw the killer in her dreams, basically. She's like, I'm the nightmare man, bitch. What you gonna do? She was a graduate in the class of 1979 in Haddonfield. She relocated to Northern California, where she became successful as a headmistress of the secluded private prep boarding school behind wrought iron gates called Hillcrest Academy. Separated from her husband, an abusive, chain-smoking methadone addict, at the age of 37, she lived on campus with her student son, and on October 31st, Halloween, when John asked permission to go on an annual school camping trip to Yosemite, or Yosemite, during Halloween weekend with the other students, his overprotective, overly cautious single mother says, no! You know what happens. Did you not hear the stories that I told you? Like, I know, Mom, I know. You told me that when you were 17 years old, you got chased by a serious madman who wanted to stab you with his stabby stab. He's like, I don't care. I want to live a normal life too. But you know what? You can't be ruining mine. She's like, fine, you're granny, bitch. So they're all like pissed. So they all like ask, hey, John, are you going? And he's like, no. He's like, well, that sucks ass. So they're like, basically, like destroying, like unwilling to allow him. And she's like, he basically said, your overprotection and paranoia is inhibiting my growth process. I need a little more open air. I've earned it, man. I'm 17. I'm old enough to drive a car. And then John's girlfriend, Molly Cartwell, was forced to remain on campus due to the problems with her financial payments. Their two friends, sex obsessed, of course, sex and horror movies. Perfectly good combo. Charles, hard to pronounce last name, and Sarah Wainthrope plan to remain behind with made-up excuses like a late history report and a 102-degree fever to hold their own private Halloween party on the almost deserted campus. Meanwhile, on Highway 139, a mother named Claudia and her young daughter Cassie pulled into an empty rest area for a bathroom stop. But they had to go to they had to go into the men's room because they just couldn't go anywhere. However, when they did that, there was a broken down car that came from Illinois. And basically he took their car while they were in the bathroom. He's like, haha, GTA 4 saves my butt again.
Hey, Rob!
Don't do that right now. Anyway, after school, Miss Tate was involved in a semi-discreet affair with her love interest suitor, the school's guidance counselor, Will Brennan, who claimed he was attracted to her issues and problems. Other staff members included Laurie's busybody secretary, Norma Watson, and the school's security guard, Ronald Jones, who feels like he's a writer of semi-erotic novels. John eventually convinced Ronnie to let him leave the locked and gated grounds during lunchtime, with Charlie to go down to get a gift for his girlfriend. At the same time, Miss Tate was having a 1 p.m. lunch hour date with the guidance counselor in the downtown restaurant, opened up describing her fears of losing her son, while Will expressed his loving support and believed that she could recover from her problems and her mysterious backstory. She claimed that she had tried everything to heal. 12 steps, self-help, group therapy, shrinks, meditation, everything. Okay, but he's like, well, you just gotta try harder. Basically, now it's like the school buses are like going like at 4:15 p.m. to leave, and Miss Tate taught an English literature on Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein. Molly noticed the masked figure lurking and staring at her from outside of the classroom behind the locked door actions before prophetically responding to a question about the Book of Fate. I think that Victor should have confronted the monster sooner. He's completely responsible for Elizabeth's death. He was so paralyzed by fear that he never did anything. It took death for a guy to get a clue. And kind of ironic that she's talking about this, especially when she did the same thing, like when Laurie Strode did the same thing when she was in Haddonfield. But I digress. She basically said why he confronted her. He's like, he had reached a point in his life where he had nothing left to lose. I mean, the monster saw to that by killing off everybody that he loved. It was about redemption. It was about fate. And she was awakened from the deep thought about the response when the bell rang. She was like basically premonition. She's like, kind of sounds like me when I was that guy. I could be the next Frankenstein person. Like, when it comes to killing the monster and stuff. But basically she's saying John's mother surprised him by allowing him to go because she thinks, hey, my son's going to be a lot safer away if Myers doesn't know that I have a kid. Which she should have done earlier, I think. But anyway, basically she asked, the guidance counselor is asking, was like, why did you have such horrible day? Like, when was everything brutally murdered? She's like, Halloween, I was 17 years old. And he's like, you're Laurie Strode, holy. he had that realization moment. But anyway, I'm going to continue this later.